no name here.
Right, can everyone hear me clearly? Is my voice clear?
You're slightly faint, but now it's better. Thank you.
All right. So to open up this debate, I would like to talk a bit about the stigma and in the science for especially for women. They're portrayed as self-negligent and only into science. We see this in TV shows, we see this in movies, we see this all around us. And this is a huge problem that spurs from ideas of patriarchy that women is basically can only do one thing and limiting their like capabilities of doing multiple things, of being whoever they are and being from the inside and the outside as they choose to be. And we see in the government team that this is our cause to fight this stereotype and to empower and uplift these women. Now, why do we debate this? Well, the world is fighting stereotypes of all sorts. We see that women in science fields fall victim to a very unfair stigma that portrays them as have nothing in their life but science. So the problem here is like there's an image about these women that they cannot do anything in their life. They cannot do sports. They cannot be hot. They cannot be beautiful. They cannot take care of their skin or their hair because they can only be scientists. Now, we don't see the same stigma about about men. Like men don't suffer from the same ideas that is surrounding them, and this is like the discriminatory idea that women cannot do these things. And we think that as this young woman in this motion participating in this magazine campaign will help fight this stigma and will have effects about women of all ages and generally on women's rights. So we would participate because it's directly fighting the stereotype, it's fighting the patriarchal ideas of what women should be and what women can do, and this would be a part of empowering yourself as a woman, as a young woman, and other young women to be scientists and to be beautiful in the same time. Now, the burden for the opposition team to win this debate, they have to prove why it's not beneficial to the women in the motion and to other women in general as stakeholders to participate in this breaking the stereotype and stigma enforced by the society. Now, we believe that breaking the stereotype is a very important point to look and have these women participate in this magazine, providing it's not a provocative campaign like we know how sometimes hardest women can be, and we don't want this woman to disrespect herself. There's like professional beauty contests that can actually be respectful to women that would actually be some kind of empowerment. Well, we are against any kind of disrespect to women as of subjectifying women, but women have the right to be beautiful and have the right to enjoy their beauty. So there's a fine line here that we would like to say that we would not accept going into provocative and disrespecting campaigns or competition between like hottest women. Yet we would like this woman to participate in this like campaign, providing it's not what I mentioned. Now, we have two main stereotypes to break here, not one actually. We have a stereotype, as I mentioned, about women in science, and we have also a very important stereotype that affects all women, which are beautiful women are portrayed as stupid. Now, to think about this problem, where does it all start from? It starts from the idea that women can only do one thing. Like in the past, women were not allowed to participate in the society as much as they do now, and like they were just valued for their beauty, for their bodies. Now, for men to fight the progression of women into the work field force and the liberation of women, they had to think of something like these beautiful women can't be stupid, they can't be smart, and these smart women can't be beautiful because this would mess up their idea about women and how they should act in the patriarchal society. And we think that fighting this is a very important thing to do here. Now, beautiful women, like we hear this stereotype so often. We hear like she's blonde but stupid, and we disagree with this. Women should not be judged based on their looks. Nobody should be judged based upon their look and judge their intelligent and their education and all that just because they're beautiful or not. And people who are actually intellect and who are smart and well educated should not be judged based upon their looks. And this is like a two sides of the stereotype we would like to break by making this young woman go participate in this campaign. Now, providing like that she was invited, she's obviously beautiful, and she's a scientist, she's obviously smart, so she's showing other women that they can be both. And this also showing other men that this idea they have in their head about women having to choose between their bodies, being healthy, doing sports, and taking care of their bodies and their skin and their hair, versus being a scientist and chasing their dreams. They don't have to choose this, as men actually don't. Men are not subjected to the same judgment system as having to choose between these two, and we think women shouldn't. And this young woman going to participate particularly in this is a direct fighting, or it's like a direct rebuttal to all the ideas men and sometimes women have about their looks and their future as intellects. So the impact of this thing happening, this woman going to participate in this. First of all, as I mentioned, the breaking the stereotype on women. Now, this is a very important thing. This is a type of empowering women. We talk all about the world, all around the world, about how women should be empowered. And actually, women should be empowered in ways that they are okay with. Like, I'm not gonna be as a guy going to women saying you should be empowered like this and you should be empowered like this. If they wanted to, like, be proud of being hot, why should I deprive them of that? I don't have the right to. As men actually have some beauty contests and nobody like talks shit about them. Now we suffer from subjugation of women, but as I mentioned, we would like to say that the campaign shouldn't be provocative. Now, young women will be presented with more options as they see their role models not as Instagram models, but as people, for example, researching COVID-19 vaccines. So they their role models, the way they see themselves in the future, will be different, and this would lead to them having more ideas and more options open to them, and these are the impacts I would present, and my teammate will follow along and enforce these arguments. And for that, I would like to propose. Thank you.
Okay, we thank the speaker for the fine speech and would now like to call upon the leader of opposition. Here.
Okay. So wait a sec. Okay, so the government suggests the idea that they are against of any kind of disrespect towards women. But unfortunately, this very magazine, it shows the contemptuous disregard towards them for a few reasons. First of all, no, it doesn't ruin the stereotype. It makes it even stronger, because the magazines that would eventually ruin the stereotypes are the ones who would list the amount of achievements of any kind of women, regardless their actual appearance. It would list their achievements, the way they reached their goals, and their actual impact on the science. But unfortunately, in this very case, this is not that kind of magazine. This is just a magazine that shows the appearance of these women. It shows how women are beautiful, and it doesn't fight the stigma that women are incapable of doing something, because it doesn't list their achievements and judges them just because they are attractive. And the second thing here is that the government says that that the women can be both, that women can be both smart and both beautiful at the same time. But unfortunately, it makes another stereotype. It gives the assumption that you must be both, that the only way to get into science is to be attractive. And at some point, thus it discriminates the women who didn't get into this magazine, the women who actually made the contribution into science, but wasn't praised to be one of these beautiful girls, for example, just because of their appearance. So it provides additional stereotypes for women. And unfortunately, the government doesn't suggest the incentives which would drive me as a person, as the main stakeholder in this debate, as the young women scientists, to accept this offer. What are we going to do in our case is, first of all, we're going to analyze and characterize the stakeholder, the main stakeholder of this debate. What are my basic incentives? Well, I'm probably the woman of science. I want to be nominated for my work and achievements. I probably work hard just because I love what I do, and regardless of what I look like, I want to make a contribution to science. That my goals in life is to become great in what I do, and to make probably a discovery, and be prized for my achievements in my career, not because of something I'm not responsible of, not for something that is quite objective, but because of my personal efforts that I make. And I want to be nominated for a Nobel Prize, not for some hottest girl of 21st century in science, for example, and stuff like that. No, I want to be prized for my contribution, and I want to be prized for my work that I do. I'm a career person. And since the fact that I'm also an attractive woman, it makes the situation a little bit worse, because I've always been perceived by others as an attractive woman. I've always been perceived by men as an attractive woman, and people liked me because I was beautiful, and not because I was smart, not because I was a genius in science, for example, and stuff like that. And I'm probably fed up with it. I'm fed up with being just attractive woman who is always perceived as someone who is not capable of doing something smart, of making contributions in science, and just being on the same level as other men who are in science. And I want people to look at me as a smart, independent women who have made some great contributions and stuff like that. And I don't want this magazine to put a label on me that I'm just beautiful and that's it. Yes, it says scientist, and that's all it says, that I'm just another beautiful woman in science, and that's all. And the fact that I'm a scientist, it makes the situation even worse. It emphasizes my appearance, not my achievements. That's the main problem with this magazine. Which is probably the worst for me, since I've always struggled because of that. I've always struggled of being perceived as just beautiful, and that's it. And I want, and people can even think of me that I got into science only because I was attractive, because it probably doesn't describes my history, the way I struggled to get my job, my contributions that I have already made. No, thank you. My contributions that I've already made and stuff like that. And we don't believe it's an appropriate method at all to encourage women to get into this. And this is the fact that we're probably more beset by my teammate than me. And probably I'm a woman, as a woman of science. I want to be, for example, in the magazine that lists and tells more about how I got into science and lists my achievements, probably without any of my photographs, so that people couldn't make any stereotypes or stigmas, additional ones about me, for example. I probably want to be perceived by others and liked by others because of my inner, because something that I have inside, for my brain, for my contributions, for my eventual contribution to science. And that's the kind of magazine I want to be in. That would prize the achievements of different women, not of the beautiful ones. And if the government wants me to do such a horrible thing, to show again my appearance and not my contributions, we are proud to oppose that. And besides, again, it's not an appropriate method to encourage girls, because in the society there have been a lot of other stereotypes about women and about their appearance. But this is the fact that that my teammate will continue after me. Thank you.
Okay, we thank the speaker for the fine speech and would now like to call upon the Deputy Prime Minister here. DPM, are you ready? Is the DPM here?
She is. Just let me check on her. She's unmuted. I don't know what. We can't hear her.
I think she should. Oh, we can't hear you, Zaina.
Okay, how about now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I went through half of my speech.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Okay, I'll start again. Just give me a second. Okay, so I will start my speech with responding to a few points that the opposition made. With first of all, that we said that you must be both beautiful and smart to get famous if you're a scientist, or even going as far as saying that people perceive the article as you going into science because you're beautiful, because you're a woman. And this is absolutely false and out of touch. This is not how the scientific field is. This is not how women in science are seen as. We see in movies, we see on media that people going into science have this stigma around them that they do not care about the looks, they do not care about how they present their looks, rather than focusing on their work and focusing on their science. It's great to focus on your work in science, but if I'm a little girl and I care about makeup and I care about how I look, how would I feel if I'm put between two choices? You're either pretty or smart. This
Zaina, you've cut out again. I can't hear you.
Okay. So we're encouraging girls to break this stereotype and to not pick from being pretty and being a scientist like we see in social media and the movies and all these medias. We actually tell them that you can be both beautiful and a scientist at the same time. The second thing they said, that being perceived as beautiful instead of being recognized for your work, which I will answer to through my argument, which actually shows why it's not okay, but actually important for women to go and participate in such articles. So, as my partner told you about breaking stigma in his first speech, I would like to continue with my second argument, with this actually provides a new platform. Usually, no matter how great a scientist's work is, either male or female, the media coverage of their work is close to none. We don't see women being celebrated for their scientific work, no matter how great their work is. For example, the Nobel Prizes. Last year was the first year in 50 years where a woman actually got a Nobel Prize in physics. Most people did not hear about that, or even if they did, they don't know who the woman is. They don't know what she actually did to win that Nobel Prize. I'm sorry, I'll drink a little bit of water. Okay. So, unless the scientist is involved in celebrity world, which most of them we know are not, they wouldn't get the chance to represent themselves and talk about their field and talk about what they do and how they actually got there. They don't get that chance. If we read the title of the article, we can guess what kind of magazine is this, what audience it caters to. Probably not the same as the audience of National Geographic or the kind of people who are interested in science and who already would read about the scientists, either male or female. But going into these magazines, this is a new platform for those female scientists to reach a new audience, a new base, and to actually show off their work, to talk about how did they get there, what did they have to sacrifice, what work they did since they grew up until they got into university and higher education, and how they got to do all of these great things that we hear about. This article, no matter how cheesy the title may sound, we're giving them a slot, a very valuable slot they would never get anywhere else to show off the work and to tell the world that we exist, that we are here, this is what we do, and to explain to young girls who might not reach these who might not be interested in science at first and think they're only interested in beauty, for example, to give them this chance to get introduced to this world. Who does this affect? Let's ask ourselves this question. Who does this affect? This will impact girls who are not exposed to the scientific world. If you ask most people why did they get into science in the first place, they will probably tie it back to having a great teacher or a great parent who was interested in science and who taught them science throughout their childhood. What about the people who do not have these things? People who are not exposed to this kind of resource, people who encourage them and show them what science actually is. Most girls see science as this thing that is only for smart people and only for nerds, for girls who do not fit in with the other girls, and there's this weird stigma about it. So a lot of girls don't even bother to see what science actually is and to read about science. But whenever they get this magazine that has this article about these women talking about their achievements and showing off how they went from their childhood until they're now successful and have all of these achievements, we will see more and more girls understand that this actually is something good. Science is not only for the smartest of girls, it's not only for nerdy girls. So we can see that effect in beauty contests. Since it's been tied to the talent of women, we've seen this change over the past couple of years, that they actually judge women on their talents and their achievements in their careers rather than only how they look. We've seen a huge shift in how the public received the results of these contests. If you look at the Twitter tweets after the world pageant, you'd see girls actually embracing and talking about what they did. We saw chemists, physicists, and engineers in these competitions, and people were actually praising their work instead of their beauty, and being so proud that there are women who are both beautiful and in the scientific field, and people who are smart and beautiful at the same time. As I told you, people who go into the Nobel Prize, for example, which is a very prestigious award, those people, although they do great work, almost nobody hears about them or bothers to read their work, whether they're women or men. Here we are giving women this platform that they would never get, they would never reach if they didn't take that chance and represent themselves in this kind of media. So what are the impacts that our team presenting to you? First of all, breaking the stereotypical image of women in science that we've seen over and over again in movies, in social media, that drives girls away from getting into these fields and from being scientists just because they don't want to be put under this box that they're actually ugly, they do not care about how they look, they can never like makeup, they can never be good at makeup because they're into science. Second of all, reaching a new platform, leading to more exposure to scientist women and their scientific achievements, leading more and more girls to get into these fields and to get exposed to what science actually is and how they can actually get into science. And that's why I'm proud to propose. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. And we would now like to call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition to close the top half of the debate. Here.
Yeah, 1 second, please. Okay, we believe that we agree with the opening government that we should fight these horrible stereotypes with women and etc. But still, we believe that by simply drawing the attention to this beautiful women in science, we won't fight all the stereotypes even more. We will make the stereotypes even worse. How, I'll talk a bit later. Well, a little bit of rebuttal. You are talking about that by drawing attention, we will fight this stereotype. But we believe that there are not simple stereotypes that if you are a scientist, you must be ugly. Or if you are beautiful, you are stupid. All the stereotypes come from a larger, more fundamental stereotype that woman is not simply not a multitasking being, but that this single task the woman can do is limited. That task is not any task, but a single task, just by caring about children and being like sexy prize for any man or something like this. And why is it so? Because, well, if you're a scientist, we agree that if you're a scientist, you couldn't have fit in. If you're a woman and you couldn't have fit in, that might be that you are not beautiful. That's why the problem is that you are not a beautiful woman, that the criteria of men that the society puts on you, that you should be beautiful, that you should display the sexual image. If you don't, then you don't fit in. And that's why you go into science. And that there's simple stereotype that all scientists are ugly. It comes because women are not fitting in. Ugly women that cannot display, that cannot earn men's attention, cannot fit in the society in a normal way, in a way normal girl would. That's why they should go into science, because they have no other choice. And yes, it is fundamental stereotype that a woman should be sexy for the man, so the man can earn her in any way or etc. because she is sexy. And we believe that this is a fundamental problem, which is the root for all the stereotypes, like if you're beautiful, you are stupid because you do not have to do anything for your further achievement. If you are ugly, then you are smart, because by simply by intellect, it's the only way to survive. We believe that it is the problem with all these stereotypes. That's why we should fight this fundamental one stereotype. And we believe that by drawing attention to this sexuality of this woman, we will not fight this global stereotype. Furthermore, we will make it even worse. Well, and simply one more problem with the argument that we will draw attention, and it will be the chance for these girls to show them off somehow, to show them their story or etc. We believe that it's simply unfair, and the principle behind that is that you can, the amount of attention given to women is limited. That means there are only 25 women, if I'm not mistaken, that can get this attention. And we believe that it's unfair to other women who are striving to be seen, who are striving to prove that they can be beautiful and they can make great achievements. We simply do not show their stories, do not expose them to the public. That's why only limited amount of people get this attention. And we believe that it is simply unfair, judging people by the criteria one cannot earn but can only be born with. And let's talk more about our case and about fundamental problem. Why is it is not appropriate for us to draw attention to these women by the way the opening government proposes us? Well, because like I have already mentioned, women have always displayed a sexual image, the price one must earn to be happy, to have a happy family, and etc. That's why stereotypes appeared, that women should be pretty, should while men hunt, women wait for them and care about their children. Women are not only multitasking, as they cannot do a lot of tasks at one time. They are just limited in one task. They can only care about children and please their men if the man wants to, because men were always stronger and they brought all the food. That's why the women were always like not in dominant species. That's why men were always using women as the way they like. That's why stereotypes appeared. That the woman should be a good wife in order for her husband to bring her food. That she should care about their children so they grow up healthy and can bring even more food. That's why how the stereotypes appeared. And that is why a woman should be sexy, and this amount that should be pretty. She should be attractive so that the man noticed her and she would bring them healthy children, and so that she could find her place with a man that will bring her all this food. That's why if woman is sexy, that's why only a man can love her, only under these circumstances. And by displaying this sexuality, well, we also
fight with the stereotypes. We say that we can display sexuality for ourselves. We can enjoy our sexuality not with the men, but still it doesn't work, because in the roots of human minds, women or men, it doesn't matter. It is embedded that the sexuality is for men only, because it was like this for the centuries. Because we, like people, centuries were believing that only sexy women get the attention, only hot women can be with the men. That's why even though some limited amount of ladies might enjoy sexuality for themselves, and they might believe that, yes.
You're mixing up between the stereotypes about women in general and the stereotypes about women in the scientific field. Thank you.
I have already explained why is it the roots from one stereotype, one have deprived from the other, because why woman is ugly in the science, because she cannot find a place with her man, because she is not sexy, because she cannot find her place. The proper woman would find her place with a man, not in the science, because a proper woman should be with the man, not in the science. That's why scientists are all ugly. And so these stereotypes are close connected in the minds of people. That means that women, which is even women which are seeing these girls in hot charts or etc., they believe that she got into science to be sexy, to be with men, because they believe that all the woman can do is being sexy for the men. The world sexuality and hotness are close connected with in our minds, and deeply embedded, close connected with the feeling of sexuality towards men. They will believe that this woman is not so, how she got into science, she must be so smart. No, she is sexy, and she got into science not to change the world or not to make this world a better place. She got sexy to be noticed by the men. Otherwise, why she would participate? Why can't she enjoy sexuality for herself? Why should she show off like this? And one more thing which adds fire to the fire is that the word hot is closely connected with the stereotypes. Hotness, we judge women by the main criteria simply, and that's unfair. And for fighting the stereotypes, other alternatives, well, you can invite them on TV so they can tell their stories and talk about their problems, or how hard it was for them. Or you can make the charts of smartest women, not the hottest women. We believe that by fighting these global stereotypes, we should at least try using not the men's criteria of hotness, and not the criteria which are embedded as womanly hotness. Thank you.
Okay, we thank the speaker for the fine speech and would now like to call upon the member of government here.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I think that's fine.
Okay. Let's start. Today, opening government perfectly shows problem of women in science, but we think that opening government doesn't have a sufficient explanation of how this problem will be solved by this project of this popular magazine. And our main argumentation will be built on smaller but more probable impacts of personal development through social networks of this woman scientist, and all rebuttal on points about stereotypes and about sexuality from opening position will be implemented in our case. Crucial frame is this debate. Social networks play a huge role in society of 21st century. Everyone has page in Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and etc. Modern HR managers require link on social networks to evaluate candidate. And after publication of your face and name in popular magazine, your audience will grow because people who are interested in science, probably women, different people who subscribe George's people, and a lot of many accounts who have incentives to become closer, to have I don't know some contracts with you, will subscribe this woman scientist. And as a result, quantity of followers can grow from 1,000 to 1 million, as we can see from popular person in status quo. What does it mean for a person? More audience of your account and more value on society through different posts and tweets. For example, more people start to read your blogs about science. More people watch stories in Instagram. And what is comparative here is perception of account. When you have a lot of followers and a lot of likes on your posts, it's legitimized your account in eyes of social networks users. And they have more incentive to read fully your post and not just scroll it. It's important comparative because in a position case, this woman also have account in Instagram, but her audience is colleagues that probably not value her personality because she's young and probably didn't succeed in science. And your friends, that is not comparative in debate because your friends will be in both cases. And we think that there is two important consequences. First consequence on society, and second on personal life of this woman. Firstly, when you have an audience and legitimacy, you become an influencer. And we cannot assume what is the main incentives and political views of this woman, but more importantly, that she gets a unique chance to spread her thoughts that she thinks about. Most likely, if she is a woman scientist, then most likely she will blog on how she achieved success in science, on how women are perceived in science sphere. And if it shows a bad picture, then most likely it will create a discourse in society. People will be indignant, and it will ask the government or important people to fix the problem. How? Reposts, retweets, and spreading of information. Most likely, this information will be distributed among the young population and students, and as a result, the change of public awareness of this problem and the desire to solve it will increase because the students will have chances to create special programs, I don't know, social activities that will announce about this problem of women in society, and they will have a lot of proofs as blogs of this woman scientist. And if the situation in the scientific industry is bad, then all the problems that this influencer will spoke about will be solved, and women will have less burden in the workplace, which will make it possible to have equal conditions, such as chances for promotion or perception by colleagues. If it's described how easy it's to be a woman scientist, or how the problems of gender inequality are solved in status quo, then this will motivate young girls to go into the field of science and not be afraid of all those fears that are spreading in society as stereotypes. Because now these young girls will feel a connection with the influencer and will know that they can always contact her and she will help. They will see as a role model or this woman as a role model. At least such thoughts will motivate girls, which will increase the representation of girls in scientific specialties. And the main comparative in the debate is that we play from interest of this woman. And if we reject the offer, then most likely another woman will occupy our page, will be top 25 hottest women in science. And we believe that everyone wants to be important for society and be useful to others, because among the media, there is already a narrative that being a philanthropist is cool. Creating socially significant project is a sign of courage. And many people want to at least try themselves in this role. And the woman scientist, most likely, this woman scientist most likely also wants to be useful for society. And therefore, it's important for her that she gets into the campaign of this magazine and not her colleague, for example, or other woman scientist. Moreover, we understand that there are other methods to become popular, to become a star of reality show, write a bestseller, etc. But in the framework of our world, when there is huge competition for these chances, we can understand that not everyone gets the opportunity. And if you got the opportunity to become famous, then it's not a fact that this chance is realized again in the future, and that this chance will repeat again in future. And therefore, even if there are any success sub-meanings in the campaign of this magazine, then we as this woman scientist should close our eyes to this success meaning, because this leads to a greater fight against sexism in the future, in her field, in scientific field, and for future generations of women in science. And in the sum of this impact, we see how we will explain how a force is really created that makes the sphere of science more gender equal. But now we will talk about why we as a girl will receive benefits, even if the result of our action will not concern us. We believe that as soon as a person becomes more popular, then he has a confidence and inspiration. Now this girl will think, if she was posted in a popular magazine, now it will be easier for her to build social connections with celebrities and influential people, such as other bloggers about feminism. And we understand that the woman could meet popular people in the world of the opposition, but the key factor is just self-confidence and self-esteem. And as soon as you become a model of a popular magazine, you find in yourself this force, and it's easier for you to be confident and build useful connections for you. Moreover, you become more confident to post in the social networks the problems that you face, such as sexism, problems of its social group, or etc. Moreover, when a person participates in social projects, he becomes more inspired to continue projects to improve the world. Another crucial factor is perception of this woman in society, because tolerance is a will not to spoil relations with the person who matters to you. And when you succeed as scientist who works with this woman, you could allow success comments or actions, now you understand her importance through the number of subscribers, and you understand that if she writes about you in social networks, that you are a success, this will have a tremendous effect on your career and life. And because of that, we are proud to propose. Thank you.
We thank the speaker for the fine speech and would now like to call upon the member of opposition here.
Just a second, please. Madam Chair, in this debate, we are going to give arguments for both, like the global impacts as opening government does and the personal impacts as the closing government does. So firstly, we'll talk about why it would alienate women who do not fit into the standards of the beauty. And also we'll talk about how it would harm our career prospects as well, directly clashing with the closing government. But before that, I just want to make one crucial clarification regarding the case of the opening government. Opening government gives to us the characterization of the field that in the status quo, women's choices are narrowed because you are either smart or you are either beautiful. We think, even if that's true, we don't think that it disadvantages the women who do meet the standards of beauty. It is the opposite. If you're a woman who's smart or who's beautiful, this is actually an advantage that you get. So we don't think that's actually kind of a problematic. But the more important issue there, we think, is the fact that the women who already into science, who already want to be a scientist, and we believe this motion would alienate them. Why? Because we believe that to the extent that stereotypes are changed on the side of the proposition, it would alienate the women who do not fit into the context of the standards of beauty as well. Note that in the status quo, science is the option that a lot of women do consider, because they seem from they see that from their life experience, in order to consider other options, like for example being a manager, they do have to have they do have to meet that standards, because otherwise they would face the obstacles regarding that fact, and they would be disadvantaged compared to their colleagues. We believe that makes the science the option that they would have preferred, because like as the opening government characterizes to us, open science is something for actually nerds, and that's where they feel have more opportunities. So what happens on their world? We believe now this woman will see that they will be facing the same problem in the science that they would have faced if they went to the HR or managing and the other spheres as well, because now we see that science is something that's something about beauty, and I do have to overcome the difficulties regarding the meeting of standards of difficulty. So only option for them is actually to meet the standards of difficulty in order to be successful in science as well. At the very least, this would be the thinking of that woman in their heads, even if it is not true. So why it's difficult to meet the standards of beauty? There are 4 reasons. Firstly, it is constructed by men and majority. It's probably about white woman who is actually which is not actually something that's true for a lot of women. Not everyone is white woman. And also, secondly, it is regarding the unchangeable traits, because people just born with certain traits and the way they are, and they cannot change that. And the things like plastic surgery are difficult. Thirdly, it also takes a lot of money, because you do have to spend money on cosmetics, hair, nails. It means also your comparative disadvantage regarding us women who do not wear makeups, or regarding the men who do not need it at all. And the fourthly, it takes time. Like you every morning do have to wear makeup. This is also something that that's the opportunity cost of fitting that standards of beauty. So impact of that argument, we believe, is actually the fact that many women in the status quo do not fit into that context and do not go to the science at all. So in the world of the opening government, there are women who want to consider science, but that now their woman is alienated. So we believe this is a significant harm that's happening on their side of the house as well. That means they do not help us women. They do not try to promote them. They do not give funding to them when they ask, and they cannot benefit from the social networks that they could have had. Otherwise, that means there are less women in science, and that's the bad thing, because we have all agreed that it's something that is bad in this debate. Now, regarding the career prospects of the woman, we believe that it is not the case that, as closing government asserts to us, that women need celebrities in order to have more social networks. We believe in the context of the science, no matter whom you know, it is irrelevant to you, and it's super unprobabilistic that after being published in one journal, you would have instantly befriend people like Brad Pitt, or I don't know. It's very difficult to do that, so we don't think that would happen on their side of the house as well. But how does that harm your career prospects? We believe there are, firstly, we believe as women scientists may ostracize you from these young scientists. Why? Because you neglect their efforts. Because all of that women have worked in order to get the position they are, and now you are capitalizing on your beauty in order to get ahead of them. This is something that's used as unfair competition, and they may like you. They may express this in a way that they don't want to work with you, or they won't give funding to your research, or won't write you a good recommendation when you apply for some scholarship or other job place. That means your career prospects are significantly harmed. But before I continue, I would like to take POI from closing. Yes.
Yes, you understand that in her career you can be damaged, but also she have a private life, which means the private life is much more important than your career, because it's kind of your relax and kind of your feeling of self.
Madam Chair, it is very difficult to distinguish in certain instances your private life and your work life, because in that instance, it is certain that your private life is going to affect your career, and at the point it affects your career, it is the reason for you to reject that notion. So we believe this point is crucial, because if you do not agree to this thing, this harm is actually going to occur exclusively when you propose that motion. That is, if that woman does not take part in this, if she doesn't accept this offer, there are other women who can't be in that position, who can actually take photo of that, and that harm is actually may happen to them, but not to you. That means there is a clear way to avoid that harm to you and to save your career. We believe this is a bad idea for young scientists to do. That's why we're very proud to oppose. Thank you.
We thank the speaker for the fine speech, and to close the case for their side of the House, we call upon the government whip. Hear, hear.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
And actually, if someone wants to ask PY, I encourage you to say it out loud, because I will not see screen most of the time. Okay, Madam Chair, firstly, what I will bring in my whip speech is that to what extent it's helpful to this woman and how it directly affect yourself. My partner brilliantly explained you two outcomes from our logic: possible social connections via the social medias, etc. And it leads to that it's much easier to address your own problems via your growing influence in social networks, etc. And here, in order to understand the importance of this argument, we need to understand the context of those scientific spheres, etc. If you are not working NASA, you face a lot of issues in that scientific sphere when you're a woman, because of those stereotypes which already exist in those spheres, which were explained by opening tables, etc., i.e. glass ceilings in promotions, etc. But and here the first point, how we differ from opening governments, which misses the comparative of this debate when they tell us about fighting the stereotypes about scientific women in and of itself. Why? Because the basis of their logic is that existence of this chart could promote fighting with sexism in this area and break the stereotypes. However, what do we need to understand is that this chart will be existing in both worlds. That's to say that it doesn't matter whether directly you as these young women participate in this chart or not in order to achieve their goals. If they really write that this chart is so influential, that's to say that it doesn't matter whether you as this woman participate here. They miss the comparative of this motion. But here, what closing government brings you in the fighting of sexism and solving of those problems, which is much more realistic and much more connected to the motion, is that how you can solve solve problems which connected to the sexism, to this glass ceiling, etc. in a scientific sphere. Which appear on your own experience. That's to say, which directly affect you. That's to say that our fighting against sexism here is much more realistic and wins over opening government's case. Okay, but now the crucial the thing which I want to clarify in this motion is that opening government and opening tables, when they're talking about fighting stereotypes, etc., completely misses the comparative of this debate. Why? Because and closing opposition as well. Why? Because it's important to understand that if we, for instance, consider the case of opening government, they tell us that it can fight stereotypes about scientific sphere, etc. Firstly, they never describe us how those stereotypes directly affect you as this woman, because as this woman in your daily life, for instance, etc. Because I'm not wearing a T-shirt, I'm a scientist every day, and it's hard to understand the case of opening government in this thing. Okay, but when every single table wants to claim this thing as something that affecting those stereotypes about maybe appearance of women in science, etc. The huge burden here is to explain why just some photos in magazine have enough power to break the stigma of conservative people and their points of view about the appearance of women scientists. Because for instance, when both opening and closing opposition tables claims the argument that now is a stigma that only beautiful women can enter the scientific field, etc., they completely ignore their own framing, where they tell us that now in status quo by scientist women are portrayed as ugly, etc., by TV shows, by media, etc. That's to say that they never explain us how it will overcome it and how it will directly work. That's to say it doesn't stand in this debate. Okay, but now let's move on. That's to say that what do we need to understand? This motion is not about stereotype, is not about breaking stereotypes globally. This to say opening government loses this debate and 50% of points of opposition bench doesn't stand here. But now let's move on to realistic comparative of this debate about influence on the women. And now let's start from closing opposition. What do they tell us? They tell us that it can break your promotion. It can harm your working conditions, because it creates unfair competition, and now everyone hates you and do not give funding, for instance, for your research, etc. We think that it's unrealistic case, because because it's highly unlikely that some scientific field will try to promote you just because now you are much more popular than other scientists, because in scientific sphere what is the most important for those companies is your efficiency in research, etc., because a lot of money spent on every single research. That's to say that the main criteria for them is your effectiveness on the workplace. But even if that's to say that the basis of this logic is wrong. Now let's move on. And in comparison, we show you that even if someone wants to discriminate you and do not give you a badge just on the basis of hate towards you, or just on the basis of sexism or other issues, it's much more easier to address those problems on our side of the house for you as these women than on the side of the house of opposition bench, because of your influence in social media, etc., which can create a hype, which can create a resistance towards this sexism, etc. Okay. But now let's move on to opening opposition. They tell us about emphasizing of my appearance and not achievements. It's based upon the premise that alternatively, someone will emphasize your achievements and make something good for you. We say that it doesn't work this way. But secondly, though, your achievements, the things that you are beautiful, doesn't undermine and doesn't get rid of your whole achievement. That's to say that you can be promoted because your brain and your mind is the most important thing in scientific field in order to increase the efficiency. That's to say that the fact that you are beautiful and everyone knows it now doesn't mean that your dignity as a clever woman is suffering now. I think I run out of time. For all these reasons, extremely proud to propose.
Okay, we thank the speaker for the fine speech and would now like to call upon the opposition whip to conclude the case for their side of the House and the debate as a whole. Hear.
So in my speech, I'll talk about empowerment, but before that, the quick comparison and the answers to closing government. So what we hear from closing government is that our case doesn't stand because in scientific community, there is a fair competition and therefore they look at your efficiency. I think, firstly, I think this scientific community is strongly competitive. That's to say everybody is efficient, everybody has their projects. And when the question is like whether you will be a manager, whether you will be promoted or not, so there are many other factors that actually affect. That's to say factors like empathy, whether your boss has an empathy, has a trust for you or not, whether your boss actually has a good connection to you or not. All those connections actually has a great impact on that, and therefore we believe that on outside of the house, promotion in the scientific community and the risk of your reputation still stands on outside of the house. Second, they say like you can use your media attention in order to solve all of those discrimination problems. I think yes, in fact, you can actually use. However, what closing government fails is closing government never proved to you why this media attention is so strong and so powerful in order to solve all your problems. That's to say, we already told you that you are not going to be a celebrity that have like a huge power in all of those instances, in all of those institutions. I think closing government never proved to you this, and therefore I think closing government fails in this debate to win closing opposition. So what we proved to you also, that's to say our case, we said that the scientific community will react negatively. That's to say, why? Because you are objectifying science and you are misleading media attention from real scientific things to things like beauty, etc., etc. And this is necessarily true because women in science will react negatively because one, they fought their entire life against sexism, but two, those are the ones who are more likely to support you and promote you because they have empathy, they understand their problems. And here the comparison is which connection is more important. Is it connection and respect in scientific community or in daily life? I think it's the first one. Why? Because one, respect in scientific community have a direct effect on your career, and on your promotion. While like you can, while on side of the closing government side, you can do many stuff in order to have your private life, like to many other things to do. But secondly, though, there are much more powerful impacts that can empower women that I will talk about later. So let's talk about empowerment. here direct comparison with opening government. So opening government says it will be empowering and will motivate many other little girls. I think there are two problems. The first problem is this empowerment is strongly depends on the magazine. That's to say, on how magazine portrays you and how this magazine will picture you. I think we believe magazine will portray and picture you as will focus on your appearance, not on your story, not on your problems. Why? Because I think it is what's demanded in the market. That's to say, people demand you to be sexy, you to be good looking, and given that this magazine is concentrated on like hottest women stuff, beauty stuff, I think it's more likely that focus will be on your appearance rather than on your problems, and therefore impacts are already limited. But secondly, the opening government fails to prove why common people will perceive your story as empowering rather than with stereotypes. I think all tables agreed that this is the whole gap in opening government that does not actually allow opening government to win this debate, because they never prove why their arguments are true, why all this empowerment stuff will be empowering. They never show to you this. So let's compare with closing opposition. That's the impact that we give to you. We tell you promotion and respect of your scientific community is important, because if you are promoted and if you are getting to be manager, you can do two things. One, you can change toxic atmosphere in your workplace. That's say things like harassment, things like harassment. But two, you can hire more women to your job place because you have empathy, you understand problems of women. Those are direct impacts that are coming from closing opposition. Why are they better and like more impactful than what opening government tells you? Because I think that in the side of opening government, we are not really sure whether we achieve this empowerment or not. However, on the side of the closing opposition, it's in your hands. Let's say it's in your hands whether there are more women in science or not. It's in your hands whether women are empowered and whether women are efficient, because there are less harassment, etc. Okay, question.
I would like to mention that we did actually make it clear how this is likely to happen, that women will be empowered through what happened in the beauty pageants when they got more involved in the women's careers. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. I think, yes, maybe it can have some effect, but all of the things strongly depend on the magazine, on how magazine still portrays you and how magazine shows your story. I think it's not all of the things are not in your hands, but in comparison, in closing opposition, you can have much more determined effect, much more effects that you can be sure. So let's talk about opening opposition. I think like comparing with opening opposition, career argument goes to closing opposition much more, because opening opposition never proves to you how it actually harms your social networking in scientific community. What impacts do you lose to? So what left in opening opposition side is stereotype argument. Let's say the same thing with this, the same thing that opening government also tries to talk about. That's the opening opposition tells there will be much more stereotype. I think impacts on opening opposition side are also very limited. Let's say in the status quo already, those stereotypes already exist. Let's say already exist that you can use only your sexual capital in order to be very efficient. You can be like so. You can be men, and like it's very hard for women to go to science career. All those stereotypes already exist. But what do not exist is the fact that those women can be promoted. Those women can be stakeholders and can hold this power in their hands. I think closing opposition wins this debate. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. If you just